I didn't go to Tony's house to spy on my wife. That wasn't the plan. We were supposed to watch the game, have a few beers, the usual. I hadn't even seen Tony in months. Not since he switched jobs and started dating that yoga instructor who posts sunrise selfies like it's her religion. He invited me over out of the blue, texted me on a Tuesday. Come watch the game Thursday, man. Let's catch up. I figured, why not? Michelle had plans with her old college roommate, the one who always smells like clove cigarettes and talks too much about her cats. I didn't want to be home alone again, microwaving leftovers while pretending to enjoy reruns of shows I stopped caring about 2 seasons ago. So I said sure. The moment I stepped into Tony's place, something felt off. It wasn't anything dramatic or obvious, just a flicker in the back of my mind, like when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. His place looked the same. Same worn-out couch that sinks too deep in the middle, same dusty bookshelf with half-read paperbacks and unopened wine bottles, same oversized flat screen mounted slightly crooked on the wall. But something didn't sit right. Maybe it was the faint smell of perfume, floral, sweet, too familiar. Or maybe it was the way he kept glancing toward the hallway, like someone might walk out at any moment. We cracked open beers, sat down, and let the game fill the silence. He talked, but not the way he used to. He used to go on about stats and trades and coaches. This time he stuck to small talk, like he was walking on eggshells. I half listened, nodding at the right parts, sipping my beer slower than usual. It wasn't until halftime that I leaned back, stretched out my legs, and felt something small jab into my lower back under the cushion. At first, I thought it was a coin or a bottle cap. I reached down, dug around under the cushion, and pulled out a single gold earring. Not just any earring. Michelle's earring. A tiny hoop with a delicate twist in the middle. She bought it from a flea market in Santa Fe during our 3rd anniversary trip. She always wore them when she dressed up, said they made her feel effortlessly classy, whatever that meant. I stared at it for a moment, turning it over in my hand, and time froze. The sound of the TV faded into the background, replaced by the pounding in my ears. I didn't say anything right away. I tucked the earring into my fist and looked over at Tony. He was pretending not to notice, fiddling with his phone, tapping the screen with too much focus. Tony, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Did someone leave this here? He looked up, and his face did something strange. His lips moved like he was forming a lie before the question even landed. Huh, he said, blinking too much. Oh, probably my girlfriend. She's always leaving stuff around. That's so, I said, not blinking, not breathing. Your girlfriend into flea markets in Santa Fe? He froze. That half-second pause. That inhale. That was all the answer I needed. He looked away and scratched his cheek, a nervous tick I hadn't seen since college when he used to bluff through poker games. Listen, man, he said, his voice dropping an octave. I didn't want it to happen like this. I laughed. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The ridiculousness of it all, my best friend, the man who gave the best speech at my wedding, standing in front of me trying to act like this was just some unavoidable accident, was so pathetic it was funny. So it happened, I said, still holding the earring like it was radioactive. Tony didn't answer. He just sat there, mouth slightly open, the kind of silence that says everything. I stood up, slow and steady, and set my beer on the coffee table without a sound. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I just walked to the door, earring still in my hand, and left. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit me like a slap. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go home. Not yet. Not like this. The next morning, I woke up in my car parked 3 blocks from our house. I hadn't planned to spend the night there, but after driving around for hours with nowhere I actually wanted to go, I ended up just pulling over and closing my eyes. My neck was stiff, my back ached, and the sun streaming through the windshield was too bright for how little sleep I'd gotten. I checked my phone, saw 3 missed calls from Michelle around midnight, and nothing after that. No messages, no questions. I imagined she was probably still asleep in our bed, maybe annoyed that I hadn't come home, maybe not even caring. That thought kept bouncing around in my head as I started the engine and drove back to the house, unsure of what I was going to say or do, but knowing I had to walk in eventually. The garage door opened like normal. My key still worked. The house smelled like toast and coffee, like she was trying to pretend it was just another Saturday. I walked in, set my keys on the counter, and waited. She was in the kitchen, dressed in a t-shirt and leggings, her hair tied up in a messy knot like she hadn't bothered to try. She looked up when she heard the door, but there was no guilt in her face, no surprise, just this blank stare like I was a guest she barely recognized. "You didn't come home last night," she said, pouring coffee into her mug like she had the right to be annoyed. I took a step toward the table and dropped the earring on it. Her hand froze mid-pour, her body tensed, and she stared at the tiny piece of gold like it had grown teeth. "I found it in Tony's couch," I said, my voice low but steady, every word hitting the space between us like bricks being stacked. She didn't move, didn't speak for a good 10 seconds. Then she sighed, set the coffee pot down, and sat in the chair across from mine without touching the earring. "All right," she said quietly. "So now you know." "That's it?" I asked, my pulse rising. "So now I know? What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice sharper now. "That I'm sorry? That it was a mistake? That I didn't mean for it to happen?" "I want to know how long," I said. "How long has it been going on?" She looked down at her mug like it held the answer. "Couple of months." "Jesus, Michelle. I didn't plan it," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "It just happened." "No," I snapped, pushing the chair back with a scrape. "Things don't just happen. You made choices. You made decisions. You drove to his place, you walked in, you took off your clothes, you did all of that knowing who he was." "He was there," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "You weren't. I was lonely. You're always so checked out lately, always at work, always tired, always halfway somewhere else. I needed someone to make me feel." "Don't." I cut her off. "Don't stand there and try to make this about me. Don't act like this was some reaction to being ignored. You could have talked to me. You could have said something. But you didn't. You slept with my best friend." Her jaw tightened, and she stood up like she couldn't sit still anymore. She walked to the sink, turned on the tap, then turned it off again without using it. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, breathing uneven. "You think I'm proud of it?" she asked. "You think I'm walking around happy that this is what happened? I didn't mean to fall into it. I didn't go out looking to cheat. But you stopped seeing me, Steve. You stopped really seeing me. I saw you every damn day," I said, pacing the kitchen. "I came home to you. I made dinner. I cleaned up. I asked how your day was. I did everything I thought I was supposed to. And when things got quiet between us, I thought it was just life, just the usual wear and tear. I didn't think you'd fix it by screwing someone else." The silence between us felt heavier now, not like the cold shoulder silence we'd gotten used to, but the kind that sat in your throat and made it hard to breathe. She turned to face me again, her arms still crossed, her face red but defiant. "So what now?" she asked. "You going to leave?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But you don't get to make this look like it's my fault. I gave you my trust. You trashed it." "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "You meant enough to keep doing it," I said. I walked out of the kitchen without another word, went upstairs, and started pulling clothes out of the closet. I didn't know if I was leaving for good, or just leaving to think, but I knew I couldn't stay under that roof. Not right then, not with her standing there acting like this was just a bump in the road. I didn't leave that day. I packed a bag, I zipped it shut, and I even carried it halfway to the front door, but something in me refused to cross the threshold. Not because I wanted to forgive her or pretend like everything could go back to normal, but because I needed a plan. Walking out without a plan would have just made it easier for her. I wasn't about to disappear and give her the house, the sympathy, or the version of events that she could manipulate. So I put the bag down in the guest room, closed the door, and locked it. That's where I stayed for the next 3 nights. We barely spoke during those days. She didn't come in and try to talk, and I didn't go looking for conversation. We ate at different times, avoided each other in the hallway, and lived like 2 strangers under the same roof. On the second night, I sat on the floor of the guest room with a notebook and started writing down everything I remembered that didn't sit right from the last few months. All the evenings she came home late, all the phone calls she took outside, all the sudden interest in her appearance when she had girl nights. It added up fast, and it made me angry that I hadn't noticed it sooner. I also started digging into our finances, pulling up our shared accounts, looking at credit card statements, checking mileage on the car. She wasn't very careful. The pieces were all there. By the 3rd day, I was done waiting. I needed to do something, not just stew in my own anger. So I texted Tony and told him to meet me at the park behind the elementary school, the one with the old baseball diamond where we used to play pickup games on weekends. He showed up 10 minutes late, looking like shit. His hair was a mess, his face was puffy, and he hadn't shaved. He walked toward me slowly, like he was waiting for someone to jump out and stop him. I stood by the bleachers with my arms crossed and didn't move. "I figured you'd want to hit me," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "You figured right," I replied, not even trying to hide how furious I was. "But I'd rather see you squirm." "I know I screwed up," he said, avoiding eye contact. "I didn't mean to, man." "Don't start with that," I snapped. "You had every opportunity to stop it. You're not some teenager who made a bad call. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were in my house. You shook my hand. You sat at my table. I was drunk the first time," he muttered. "I don't care," I said. "You think that excuses it? You think being drunk makes it okay to go behind my back and sleep with my wife?" He looked up, finally, and for a second I thought he might actually cry, but I didn't care. He didn't deserve sympathy. "I ended it," he said, "before you even found out. She and we talked. It wasn't going anywhere. It was stupid. I regret it." "You ended it," I repeated, shaking my head. "Good for you. You ended something you never should have started. You want a medal?" He took a step closer, and I stepped back. "Don't," I warned him. "Don't come near me. Don't talk to her. Don't call. Don't text. You're done." "Steve, listen." I said, "You're done." He stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, like some broken version of the guy I used to trust. I turned and walked away without another word, and he didn't follow. I don't think he had it in him. That night, back at the house, I walked into the kitchen while Michelle was putting away dishes. She didn't say anything, just glanced at me like she was bracing for another argument. "I talked to him," I said. "I figured," she said, setting a plate on the rack. "He says it's over," I continued. "He says he regrets it." She turned around, leaning on the counter with her arms crossed, her face unreadable. And I want to make something very clear," I said. "You don't get to keep the house. You don't get to pretend like this was just a rough patch. You made a choice. You tore this apart. And I'm going to make sure that's how everyone sees it." "Are you threatening me?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "I'm telling you what's coming," I said. "I'm done playing the idiot husband who gets walked all over. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm going to file next week. I'm going to protect what's mine." "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice suddenly soft, like she was trying to find the version of me that used to give in. "You did this," I said. "You don't get to ask for understanding now." She didn't argue after that. She just stood there, watching me walk out of the kitchen again, this time with my mind made up. 2 days after that conversation, I stopped sleeping in the guest room. I moved back into our bedroom, not because I forgave her or wanted anything from her, but because I wasn't going to give up my place in my own house. She moved her stuff into the smaller room without saying a word, which was probably the smartest thing she'd done in weeks. I didn't talk to her unless it was about logistics, and even then, I kept it short. I wasn't interested in anything she had to say unless it involved signing papers or getting out. While she continued to act like she was waiting for me to calm down and change my mind, I was too busy putting my plan together to bother arguing. I had an idea that needed time, and I wasn't going to rush it. I started gathering evidence, not just for court, but for everyone else who thought we were the perfect couple. I went through her emails, her old messages, her social media DMs. She never changed her passwords, and I didn't feel even a little bad about using them. I saved everything: the messages, the photos, the call logs. Every confirmation, every detail. I wanted a clean record. I wanted people to know exactly what she'd been doing while playing the role of a devoted wife. It wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. It was about making sure no one could twist the story into something it wasn't. Once I had enough, I started preparing the delivery. I printed out screenshots, sorted them by date, and put them in folders. I created a USB drive with backups. I addressed packages to her parents, her sister, her boss, and even one to Tony's girlfriend, the yoga instructor who probably thought he was just a fun guy with a gym membership. Each envelope was sealed and labeled with nothing but a return address that led to a P.O. box I rented for the week. I didn't write a letter or explanation. I didn't need to. The contents were clear enough. The day I sent everything out, I waited for her to leave for work and spent the entire morning at the post office, watching the clerk scan and stamp each envelope. There was a strange calm in me while I stood there, watching the system process what I knew would blow up their carefully guarded secrets. I didn't feel proud or victorious. I just felt like I'd taken back a little control. She still didn't know what I'd done when she came home that evening. She acted normal, as if the previous week had just been a misunderstanding that would eventually fade. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't have to. Tom would handle it for me. It took less than 2 days. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her phone on the counter next to a half-empty wine glass. Her face was pale, her eyes red, and the way she looked at me when I walked in said everything. Her parents had called her. Her sister had texted nonstop. Apparently her boss had summoned her into his office that afternoon and asked why her private drama had landed on his desk. She didn't ask me directly if it was me, but I could see it in her face. She knew. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly, her voice strained. "I did," I replied, taking off my jacket and hanging it up slowly. "You thought you could cheat and still keep your reputation intact. You thought you could lie and hide and walk away without consequences. You humiliated me," she said, almost whispering. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You humiliated yourself. I just made sure the people around you stopped pretending you were something you're not." She looked down at the glass, then pushed it aside like she'd lost her appetite for everything. "So what now?" she asked. "You just want to ruin me?" "No," I said. "I don't care about ruining you. I care about the truth. And I'm not going to let you walk away clean while I get painted as the guy who couldn't keep his marriage together." She didn't respond. She just sat there, motionless, while the kitchen filled with the kind of silence that doesn't ask for anything. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. A week after the envelopes were delivered, she finally asked for a conversation. Not one of those fake check-ins where she pretended like we were still partners, and this was just a rough time, but an actual sit-down where we could talk without avoiding the obvious. I agreed, not because I wanted to hear her explanations, but because I needed closure. We sat in the living room, not across from each other like people trying to reconnect, but at opposite ends like two people discussing a business deal that had gone bad. She looked tired, not in a physical sense, but the kind that sets in when you run out of excuses. I didn't speak first. I waited. If she wanted this talk, she could start it. "I know I can't fix it," she said, her hands in her lap, her eyes on the floor. "I'm not even sure what I expected when I asked to talk. I just thought maybe we should say some things out loud before we go through with the divorce." "You didn't think about that before you started sleeping with him?" I asked, my voice flat. "You didn't feel the need to say something when you were hiding text messages and coming home late?" She nodded slowly. "I should have. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that it didn't mean anything. I told myself I'd end it and you'd never know. And you thought that was the best plan?" "I was scared," she said. "I knew we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't feel like you saw me anymore." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and looked at her for a long time before responding. "I saw you every day. I came home. I asked about your work. I made sure we had dinner. I checked in. I tried. You stopped seeing me, Michelle. You gave up before I even knew there was a problem." "I didn't mean to," she said. "That doesn't matter anymore," I replied. "Intentions don't fix anything. You chose to lie, and now we're here." She looked like she wanted to cry, but I didn't care. I had already spent my nights laying awake wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough, whether I'd missed some sign that could have changed everything. I was past that now. I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to say what needed to be said before I signed the paperwork. "I'm filing next week," I said. "The lawyer has everything. You'll get your copies in the mail." She nodded again, slower this time, like the weight of it had finally settled in. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "I don't feel anything for you," I said. "Not love, not hate. You're just someone I used to know, and I'm not going to spend the rest of my life letting that define me." She looked away, like she couldn't handle hearing it out loud. "What about the house?" "I'll buy you out," I said. "You'll get your share, and then I want you gone. I'm not leaving. I built this life. You threw it away." She didn't argue. For once, she didn't have a comeback or some emotional plea. She just nodded, stood up, and walked out of the room without another word. That was the moment I knew it was over, not just on paper, but for real. There was nothing left between us. No more lies to unravel, no more explanations to hear. Just the final steps toward separation. Later that night, I sat outside on the back porch, not thinking about her, but about what came next. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a start. I hadn't figured out everything, but I knew one thing for sure. I was going to be fine. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. We didn't do court theatrics or long depositions. Everything was already sorted through the lawyer, and she didn't fight any of it. Maybe she was too exhausted to argue, or maybe she knew there wasn't much of a leg to stand on. She signed the papers the same way she signed for packages, just a quick scribble with no emotion. I watched her do it across the table in the lawyer's office, and when she looked up after handing the pen back, she didn't smile, didn't cry, didn't say anything at all. That was the last time we were in a room together. She moved out 3 days after that. I came home to a house missing half its furniture, which she was allowed to take according to the agreement. I didn't care what she took, only that she left. The guest room was cleared out, her closet was empty, and the scent of her perfume that used to linger in the hall was gone. I walked through the house and didn't feel sad, just relieved that it was quiet. She left a note on the kitchen counter that I didn't read. I threw it away without opening it because I already knew anything worth hearing had been said or was too late to matter. There was no need to keep replaying it in my head or on paper. The following week was slow. I didn't go out and celebrate or try to distract myself with forced outings or company. I took time to just be in the house without her. It was like breaking in new shoes, uncomfortable at first, then slowly easier with each step. I got rid of the couch she'd picked out, the paintings she hung, and every picture of us together. Not out of spite, but because the place needed to feel like mine again. I replaced the dining chairs, painted one of the bedrooms, and took all her books to a donation center. It was boring and ordinary, but it made a difference. Every little thing that left made room for something else that didn't come with a memory I didn't want. Friends started reaching out. Some had heard about what happened from her, others from the packages I sent. Most of them were supportive, and a few had their own stories about things she'd done or said that suddenly made sense. I didn't care about the gossip. I didn't want to make it a bigger show than it already was. I just thanked them and moved on. I stopped bringing her up unless someone asked directly. And even then, I didn't give them all the details. I didn't want pity. I didn't want validation. I just wanted to keep going. A couple of weeks later, I ran into Tony at a grocery store. He didn't see me at first. He was in the cereal aisle, looking at boxes like they might offer a way to hide. When he turned and noticed me, he froze. I kept walking, stopped next to him, and looked him in the eye. He didn't say anything, probably assuming I was about to unload on him right there in public. I didn't. "You still seeing her?" I asked, calm as ever. He shook his head. "No." That ended fast. "Good," I said. "Don't ever speak to me again." He nodded like a man who knew better than to respond, and I walked away. That was all I needed from him. Life didn't suddenly become amazing after the divorce. I still had mornings where I woke up expecting to hear her in the shower. There were still times I went to text her about something random before I remembered there was no reason to. But those moments passed. The silence became normal. The loneliness turned into something manageable. I went back to living. Work stayed the same. Routines stayed the same. But now there was no weight dragging behind me. No secrets, no guilt, no pretending. I didn't become someone new. I just stopped being the version of myself that kept holding on to something that was already gone. I didn't chase revenge beyond what I'd already done. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. It always had been. And I didn't care who she became afterward or what story she told. That part of my life ended the moment she walked out with her suitcase and didn't look back. Now, when people ask if I'm okay, I tell them the truth. Yeah, I'm fine. Because I am.